I spent hours on crypto Twitter, so you don't have to. Here's what's happening. You probably already heard that the Federal Reserve cut interest rates. The Fed also announced some quantitative easing. Whenever the Fed meets, there's a question about how the markets are going to respond. On-chain markets are no different. There's a general premise that when the Fed does things like cut interest rates and announce quantitative easing, that should be good for markets. And for the briefest moment, it was. Prices went up after the news broke midday, but that momentum didn't last. Within a couple hours, the price of assets like Bitcoin and Solana were already below where they were before the announcement. Does this make sense? Is this surprising? Honestly, it's hard to say. The reality is that people have expectations about what the Federal Reserve is going to do. There are even tokenized event contracts related to this. So if people really expect the Federal Reserve to do something, then the Federal Reserve does it. It doesn't really have that big of an impact. What would have a really big impact is if the Fed did something people didn't expect. A second explanation might be that there's other information that moved crypto markets, or that the Federal Reserve's decisions aren't so relevant for on-chain asset prices. The third is that people sometimes read into what the Federal Reserve is doing and what the Federal Reserve is saying. So when the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates, that isn't necessarily a great thing. People might wonder, why is the Federal Reserve cutting interest rates? It might be because inflation is falling, which people have recently thought of as a really good thing. That doesn't seem to be what's happening. The third is a little more balanced. It's kind of like the Federal Reserve just thinks its rate is too high. It had the rate at some level for a reason that made sense in the past, but just doesn't anymore. When you bring all of this together, you start to understand why it's so hard to understand the price movements that happen after Federal Reserve announcements. Bitcoin went up and then it went down. Sure. Anyway, the Federal Reserve's announcements are always a topic of crypto Twitter's attention. It's just that this time, the price impacts, if any, were just short-lived. Guess we'll have to wait till the next Fed meeting.